Hello, everyone. Welcome and come on in. I am going to just open up our chat on the sidebar here. For those of you who are coming into the room, if you want to do me a favor and just type in hi or hello into the chat, it's a great way for us to be able to test that the chat is actually working. Thank you so much. We're going to give it a couple minutes here for everyone to be able to come in live. If you are someone that is watching the recording of this, we will have the opportunity for questions to be posted in there as well too. And yeah, get yourself settled. Pen, paper, either a warm cup of something or a water so you've got your hydration. Turn your phone off so that you are, I always say if you are creating the space and taking the time to be here for yourself, allow yourself to really be here so that you can soak up all the goodness. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. We feel real sorry for you, Kelly. In PV in Mexico. Awesome. Nikita, new mama, new synced baby born. Little Eva. So good to see so many familiar names and so many brand new ones here as well, too. Awesome. All right. So it is beautiful out where I am. I am not in Puerto Vallarta. I am in Kelowna, BC. The sun is shining. It is 4 o'clock where I am. It is whatever o'clock wherever you are in the world right now. And we're going to spend the next about 75 minutes together into this masterclass tonight. So we will be sending out the recording. Recordings typically go out about 24 to 48 hours later. We actually create you a bonus guide after our masterclass. And so we have like key takeaways and notes that are in there and any supplements or any brands, anything that I mentioned. So you have this, tangible something that you can go and save. And then you can also go back and listen to it again. So if you're a little bit of a nerd like me, I love learning. I'm an eternal student. I love to show up in this space and take the information in. And when it's a really good one, I like to take it then with me via recording on my walk. I just hear something different every time I go back. And there's a lot we're going to talk about tonight that so many women reach out to us in our community in regards to with their metabolic health and their skin health and their gut health and, muscle building and body composition as they're getting into their late 30s, their 40s and 50s and beyond. And so tonight we're talking about this through the lens of, creating this beautiful blueprint or this roadmap for yourself. And if you've never joined me for a masterclass before, I will let you know I don't answer questions throughout the whole thing. So I'm going to be teaching the Fit and Fierce blueprint for perimenopause and beyond. And every now and again, I'll stop and say, like, does that land? Does it resonate? Does it make sense? Do you have a question around that? And then as we get towards the end is where I open up the floor and I stay on and do some additional Q&A. So the first thing is I want to welcome you into a beautiful collaboration as to what is bringing this class to you all tonight. I offer a lot of different workshops online and in person. I do a lot of free masterclasses, and these classes are really made possible due to the incredible support we have from different sponsors. And sponsors like the one that we are collaborating with tonight, where I don't talk about a million different products, a million different companies. I have a few select companies that I bring into my life because I bring them into my body, or I use them with my family, with my kids and my husband. I use them in programs or with clients I'm working with and with friends. And so, I'm a pretty picky person when it comes to integrity and to quality. And I'm just so excited to be collaborating with Within Us, which is the company that is sponsoring this masterclass tonight. And I will be talking about some of the ways that incorporating a few of the products in this company have made a big difference in my body at 45 years old. If you've been following me on Instagram for a while, you'll know I've made some pretty significant shifts in things that I use and in things that I do in my training regime, just my life as a whole over the last couple of years. And so I'm also going to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes glimpse into what some of those things have been, because it's amazing on the one end to be able to have so much knowledge and education. But I know that as humans, we connect through stories and through sharing and through storytelling. So I'm going to give you a lot of great info tonight. Some things may feel like right now they're not where you're at in this particular time, and other things you're going to think, man, I wish I heard this 5 years ago. And what I would say is like, take everything with you forward. When you are going through perimenopause and menopause and beyond, honestly, as a woman, when you are at any time in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, I would even argue your 70s. And I say that because, my mom is in her late 70s, and I still see these fluctuations happening in her. We don't just get to a point in our bodies where now all of a sudden everything is homeostatic, meaning everything is just even keel. That word balance, when it comes to our health and to our hormones, you are chasing a moving target that is going to feel different all the time as a woman. So sometimes we are creating, a bottleneck energy in our goals because we have this illusion like everything has to be perfect and everything has to be in balance. And anytime something shifts or all of a sudden we have a new symptom or something comes back, that we've innately done something wrong. And that is not true. And I hope that you come away from this call tonight having a new level of excitement about your body at this time, allowing yourself to be empowered right now. I am definitely somebody who I teach obviously in everything I do, reconnecting women to their bodies, but I want you to move into this time of your life, taking up more space. I want you to feel stronger. I want you to be more powerful. I want you to be able to use your voice. I want you to be able to embrace the audacious woman that you are. And I want you to be able to move through your body, whether it's in the kitchen with the nutrition choices that you are making, or it's in your workouts, it's in how you recover, it's the way that you show up in your job with a level of confidence that you really own. And it's very difficult to do that as a woman if what the measuring stick that we are using is measuring ourselves against every other woman that we are looking at. Well, she's the same age as me, so I should look like that. I should be feeling like that. That should be the definition of my vitality. And that's not true. We are all so different. So first thing tonight is to welcome you all here as the incredible women that you are, and to get very excited about the possibilities of what it can mean to truly step into metabolic health and vitality for your body now and moving forward. So the big things we're going to cover tonight is what happens to your muscle and your metabolic system and composition, in our 40s, 50s, and beyond, and really to start to learn how to work with your body and not against it. So many of the things that you used to do in your 20s and your 30s, the same tactics do not work anymore. And oftentimes we end up getting in the way. And now we end up creating a little bit of a roadblock to achieve some of those goals. I want to talk tonight about how strength training changes everything for us in our midlife health and our energy and our body's ability to actually continue to build muscle. We are at a time in our life, ladies, where we have the opportunity to build the most muscle we ever have before. And so many women think it's the opposite, that as soon as you get to, your midlife, that now everything goes downhill and you don't have the opportunity, you've missed your muscle building windows. It's actually not true at all. And so we're revolutionizing the way that women actually show up and embrace training. And I'm going to talk tonight too, for those of you who feel like I want to do strength training, I want to build muscle, but I'm tired. My body is exhausted. I feel overwhelmed. I just don't feel like I have anything left in the tank. And I'm going to break that down a little bit deeper tonight. I'm also going to talk about the connection between exercise and your immune system and your nervous system, and why that recovery piece is so important, but also why you don't want to tip too far into living in recovery. And what I mean by that is that sometimes it feels safer to stay in the zone of, I don't want to do too much. I don't want to push my body. And I know for me, I hit burnout a couple of times in my mid 30s. In my 40s, I feel freaking awesome. But in my 30s, woo, there were some humdinger times with small children and businesses, and subscribing to this notion that I had to hit enough cardio. I had to do enough weights. I had to also be, adding HIIT in there and do all of these things. And my poor body was just so exhausted from all the physicality that I was throwing at her, but was also so overwhelmed from life and, moving through life, being pulled in so many different directions, that I had a little bit of PTSD. And so when I would start to try and go and lift heavier again, or embrace trying to get strong in my body again, the minute my body felt uncomfortable, the minute my body was sore, I would be like, oh gosh, I've gone too far again. And that was that like I was going back to how it used to be. And here's the thing I just want to say to you. If you are a woman that has gone through burnout, who's gone through what you would describe as burnout and as that fatigue or chronic injuries from working out, you're somebody who's just overdone it. I I would challenge you to recognize in yourself that it is probably impossible for you to ever go back there because now you are hardwired to recognize the second you do, it's an opportunity to course correct. So the second that my body and my life gives me the sign that I've dipped the toe too far over to the left, I'm like, "Rrr," and I'm like, no, what do I now have to shift so I can stay feeling the way that I'm feeling? Okay. I'm going to talk to you tonight about the balance of your protein, your carbohydrates, fats, fiber. We're going to talk about alcohol. I'm going to teach you why carbohydrates are not the enemy. And in fact, if you are struggling, in building muscle and in having good quality sleep and recovering really well, why carbohydrates may be the thing that you have to look at creating a little bit of a shift around. And that's really a mindset piece. And then I'm going to talk about supplements to really bring in to augment. What are the things to be focusing on? And what are the things maybe we don't need right now? We don't need to have cupboards full of things we're taking every day. I mean, you could be someone like me where we have an apothecary in our home, which means I do have a cupboard that has a lot of different things, supplements and homeopathic remedies and powders and tinctures, but I'm not putting them in my body every day. There's a time and a season and a reason for what we bring in. And tonight I'm going to focus on what I think are some of the most important support mechanisms in terms of supplements and also the biggest needle movers when it comes to the topic at hand. And then I'm going to talk to you about, some of those key takeaways, and we're going to open up the floor for discussion. So before we jump into this, just a reminder, I'm not going to be answering any questions until I get to the tail end because I actually have things that I want to teach you first. And so if we're just jumping all over the place with questions, I won't be able to do that. So I would love to know from maybe a half a dozen of you, and I'll just kind of read the first ones that come out. What is it that you are hoping to come away from this tonight? With the key thing focusing on the Fit and Fierce blueprint for perimenopause and beyond, in terms of getting a strong body and dialing in that way. What are you excited to learn about? I would love if just a couple of you could throw it into the chat, and then we're going to get going. I'm just going to hydrate with my rehydrate and my electrolytes. Love this. Getting stronger and maintaining energy levels, how to get stronger, healthier, and longevity. Love that. Getting better sleep, shifting away from exhaustion, continuous learning. That's actually my favorite one. All right. Oh, so good. So many of you in there. Okay, my eyeballs trying to read so fast. Okay, this is so good. Amazing, amazing. I love how many of you are talking about getting stronger and building muscle because this is like, our bodies, we are a bank, we are a chemistry lab, and we are a history book all rolled into one. And we put deposits into our bank account and we create withdrawals with our lifestyle every single day. We are also a walking chemistry lab. So where we get so over focused on what other women are doing and what's working for the masses, we really neglect to take a look into the individual and what our own chemistry and our own body is communicating with us. And then the history book piece is that our timeline, our health history, like everything that you've gone through from being a young child all the way to today, your health history, mental emotional history, every single thing you've experienced, that is actually what has led to the women that we are all sitting here, together as today. And she requires a lot of attention and a lot of acknowledgement. And to be quite honest, ladies, a lot of flipping grace. I mean, how many of you would agree that we create grace for so many people in our life? And sometimes the people that don't maybe necessarily, deserve that grace. And we don't create it for ourselves. We're very hard on ourselves and we hold the bar and the expectation super high. So thank you so much for all sharing into this. Love it, love it, love it. All right, friends, here we go. I want to say buckle up, but it's not going to be like intense like that. So why does it matter so much in midlife? The hormonal shifts that we go through in midlife, it's not just about your estrogen and your progesterone changing. Those are your sex hormones, your reproductive hormones that are shifting. And there's a lot that's going on there between estrogen and progesterone. There's also testosterone that is shifting, DHEA, which is produced in your adrenals, and your adrenal hormones as a whole. So your adrenals are glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they are responding to stress. And we have to remember with stress that if you poll 10 people about stress, probably, 6, 7 out of 10 are going to say, like, yeah, I've got stress, but it's just your everyday stress. And then other people say, no, I have significant stress that's going on. But what we have to remember is that stress, your body doesn't know if it's real stress that's literally happening to you, or if it's stress that you are witnessing that's happening to others. There's something going on with your children, your partner, a loved one, somebody in your community. Your body doesn't know if it's imagined stress. So it's no different than when you are watching something terrifying. When you are, this is why I do not watch the news. I don't subscribe to all of the negative energy that can happen, because my body, my nervous system doesn't realize that when I am being impacted by what is happening on that level, that it's not mine. And your body will create a response to that. Now, how all this, works in the back end is that when we have these declining sex hormones, we have adrenal hormones that are responding in different directions. We have hormones like insulin and leptin and ghrelin that are impacting how your body manages insulin and your glucose. All of these things impact how your body builds muscle, how your body burns fat, how your body recovers, how your body sleeps well, how your body absorbs and uptakes nutrients. So when you hear people talking about hormones changing in midlife, it is not only about the hormones where we could bring in hormone replacement therapy. HRT can play a big role in a woman's life, and I will talk about that later in tonight's conversation, but we still need to be dialing in and focusing on the lifestyle. Right. And this is what's going to help you to really navigate this, in your own story, and how to bring in what you understand about your own body in a way that this feels like it is your lived experience. I also want you to be able to walk away with understanding that to become stronger, to become leaner, whatever that definition is for you, to have more energy, we have to be careful of our words, because words do matter. And I'll give you a prime example. Women will oftentimes say things like, I don't want to get bulky, I just want to tone. And that right there, right out of the gates, I'm like, and this is what we've done wrong for women, is that we've taught men, go and lift weights to get strong and be powerful and to bulk. And women, don't go lift those heavy weights because you will also get bulky. Go lift the pink weights and lift the light weights all the time so that you actually just stay toned. We just want you to be toned. We don't want you to be bulky. The reality is, when most women are looking at another woman's body, at her physique, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, look at her defined arms, look at her shoulders, look at the muscles in her back or in her quads. That woman is not lifting 2 pounds. That woman is not, going out and running. That woman is lifting, or she's like genetically gifted, because those people do exist. But when we are lifting weights, there is no different. There's not a squat that is for toning or a squat that is for bulking. There are squats. Okay. And it doesn't matter if we're talking a goblet squat, a barbell back squat, a hack squat, a sissy squat, a squat that we are doing. And if we are doing progressive overload, we are doing this to build muscle. You will have the appearance of a toned body because you are building more muscle, and muscle is your most metabolically active organ and tissue that you have in your body, meaning that it is burning calories 24/7. Okay. It is helping to sop up excess insulin. It is helping you manage your estrogen levels. It is helping to support your bone health. It is helping you to manage your body's ability to burn fat. It is the most thermic effect loaded tissue you have in your body. So as women, we do not want to be afraid of lifting weights, dumbbells, kettlebells, machines, whatever it might be. We need to be asking a different question. How do I lift weights in a way where I actually feel good, I reduce injury, and I can recover optimally? That's the better question to ask. Not, am I going to get bulky? Like, I wish that was the reality. Coming from somebody who is like, I am lifting to try and be bulky right now, and it ain't freaking easy. The only women I ever see who can actually get very bulky when they lift weights are if they're eating in a caloric surplus, meaning you are eating more than your body requires. And the breakdown of what you're eating is more processed, higher in sugars. There's more alcohol that's on the scene. There's a lot of inflammatory foods coming into the body. And, you're going in and doing that strength training. And then the other side of this is that A lot of women will go and work out for 40 minutes, an hour a day, but then actually live a sedentary lifestyle. So two truths can exist at the same time. You might do an incredible job going and working out for the 40 to 60 minutes, but then if you have a desk job or you're just not moving around the rest of the day, you don't have that NEAT exercise, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, up and down the stairs, fidgeting, doing stuff like moving around. That also can be something where you might now be eating, thinking, I got to go eat according to my training. And I've trained really hard, so I got to go feed the muscle. I got to go take in lots of carbs. I got to go, pile on a whole bunch of protein right now and get in those healthy fats, but then you're not moving the rest of the day. And so this is, hopefully you're going to learn a lot about this tonight, but this is also when, if you really do feel like you're doing a lot of things correctly and you just keep hitting a wall, that is when working with someone one-on-one, because first of all, they're not your family. They're not connected to you. They don't have a bias. They're going to be able to take an aerial view of what it is you're currently doing and help you to understand this is supportive, this we might need to tweak, and how you actually gauge that over time. So when we talk about muscle and metabolism and body composition in perimenopause and menopause and post, so this goes, I don't care if you're 35 listening to this or if you are 72. The same rule applies, that when we look at longevity and we look at how we can actually create the most metabolically healthy body, having more muscle is going to be a big part of that. Right. And so this is also, ladies, part of what is protecting your heart health, because when you are strength training, when you're doing resistance training and you're building muscle, you are not just pumping the muscle, you are working the main pump, which is your heart and your cardiovascular system. And this is incredible for bone density. So, when we've come through this period of time where so many women have just been told, just take calcium, that didn't work, right? We have more women that have become osteoporotic and sarcopenic. What we should have been doing was telling women about supporting all minerals, not just calcium, not just vitamin D, but calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, talking about electrolytes and how bringing in these minerals, collagen, is also so incredibly important for when we're talking about preserving muscle, giving the body enough energy to train optimally, and helping to, keep the tendons and the ligaments that are supporting your system, your muscles upon your bones and your joints in your body as a whole. When you look at things like how estrogen is going through these increases and ultimately decrease. So a lot of women will be told they have estrogen dominance when they're in their 40s, because they have heavier periods, they have breast tenderness, they have headaches, brain fog, migraines, clotting in their periods, a lot of the things that would be considered to be more estrogen dominant. But the reality is that we are having these fluctuations of estrogen in that period of time in relationship to progesterone. And at the end of the day, none of us are getting on the other side of perimenopause and moving into menopause with high estrogen. That's just not how it works in our bodies. What is happening is progesterone is typically starting to bottom out first, because our body gets to a point where it's like we don't have the same amount of eggs anymore. We're not maturing these follicles. We're not ovulating anymore. We're not trying to conceive. And so as progesterone is starting to bottom out, this is oftentimes in women, they can't sleep. Their anxiety starts to increase, and maybe anxiety comes on for the first time in their life. Their workouts don't quite feel the same, like they're just going through the motions. This is where heart palpitations can come on. Oftentimes women get told that if you have hot flashes or you have night sweats, automatically it means you have low estrogen. And that may not be the case in the beginning. If we have low progesterone, that can be enough to signal to the body to bring on those vasomotor symptoms. So again, this is where you're not just like trying to DIY it and then run to your doctor and go, I'm this age, I need to get on an estrogen and progesterone stat. And right now, nowadays, most doctors are going to be like, no, you have to fall into these categories, right? This is the criteria. For most women, it is getting started on something like progesterone. In my case, I'm working with women on their lifestyle. Before we start to jump around and look at a million things, the questions I would ask you, ladies, is, are you actively moving your body right now? So what does your daily movement look like? Are you actively doing some form of resistance or strength training 2 to 3 days a week? What does your sleep look like? What does your nutrition look like? And what does your stress look like? Like those are really the 5 vitality signs that we want to be tapping into initially. And then, yes, looking at things like the quality or changes in your cycle. I mean, your gut health is a huge barometer for everything that's going on, which is again why I do love things like collagen coming into our daily lifestyle because it is supporting the lining of our gut. It is helping to create a lot of integrity on a very intrinsic level. And so this is something, if you've attended one of my master classes before, I teach about this with your gut health all the time. If you want to optimize bringing in more protein into your body and you want to be able to optimize your macronutrients, if you have a gut that has got chronic bloating and gas and indigestion and you're constipated, or you have the opposite that's happening with diarrhea, let's dial in and start to work on identifying what is triggering that and calming that down so that your body can do a better job at now taking in some of those nutrients that are going to be needed for going and building the muscle. The other thing to think about here is that these hormonal shifts that are happening in our bodies come midlife, our ability to manage insulin is changing dramatically. And we do a lot of different functional testing in our company. We do a lot of CGM, like continuous glucose monitor, charting and graphing. There's a lot of things that we've been able to witness over the last, decade and a half working specifically in women's hormones and collecting clinical data to see that you can take, a woman who may not be doing a very, consistent job in her lifestyle. So she may be eating some processed food, not working out, doing all the things where you would expect, okay, if there's some insulin issues going on, that makes sense based on where she's at in her lifestyle right now. And then you can look at another woman who is exercising, she's doing a pretty good job of eating, she's trying to manage her stress and get herself to sleep, and she's still having insulin sensitivity issues. She's still seeing cholesterol levels increasing in her blood work. She's still being told some of her liver enzymes are increasing her blood panels. And she is like, I don't understand what's going on. The very fact of these hormones declining in our body and how they're pulling these intrinsic strings that are impacting our adrenal health and our thyroid health, cortisol management, which we're going to talk about cortisol tonight, and my opinion may shock you a little bit. But this is all impacting how we utilize insulin as well. And so if one of your goals is to better manage your blood sugar, it's starting to creep up with you, you're feeling puffy and inflamed, and you're putting a lot of the weight on around your midline and your waist, then managing blood sugar is definitely going to be one of the number one things we're going to work on. And that's going to be with your nutrition, your stress management, but also the way in which we work out. If I have a woman who's coming in and who's like, I'm just putting on all this inflammatory weight, my prescription for her is not going to be to go and do 5 days a week of intense cardio on an elliptical or a spin bike or to go out and run 5 days a week. I'm actually going to have her decrease for a period of time the amount of intensity and volume that she's putting on her body. And I'm going to bring her into something like bringing in some Pilates or some yoga and some light strength training for the first little bit to get her body to just calm down. I'm going to see if she can trade in the higher intensity, longer duration cardio sessions for getting out for a walk after a meal, for, squatting for 1 minute after a meal versus going out for a 30-minute run. And I'm going to talk about a study that was actually done semi-recently that will probably blow your mind in terms of training volume and how much we actually need in our bodies as women. So if we know that adding more muscle in our bodies in our late 30s and our 40s, 50s and beyond is so important, this is oftentimes people will say like heavy lifting is the secret to keeping, muscle. Either you're building muscle or you're preserving it, to burning fat and to staying energized. But what about the woman where she actually doesn't understand what heavy means? Because heavy is relative to the individual. Like, what's heavy for me to go and do a shoulder press with is going to be different for another woman. Like, I could sit down and shoulder press 30 pounds and I'm like, that is heavy. Another woman could try and do that and be like, I warm up with that. That's light. And another woman is like, are you kidding me? 30 pounds. Like, I am struggling to push 8 pounds over my head 8 times. So you're not, again, measuring the heaviness to someone else. It's based on your body's rate of perceived exertion. How well can you perform that movement pattern? And in the beginning, I would say for women, you should be able to perform easily 10 to 12 repetitions with a certain amount of weight, full range of motion, and really feel your body going through that range. Not partial reps, not, having to swing, like you're really connecting to your body, and spend enough time there until your body is like, okay, I could do this like 16, 20, 30 times. We need to go up in weight, and not being afraid to embrace lifting a little bit heavier. So the one side of it is going to be understanding, what does heavy mean? The other thing that I want to address tonight is the fear around strength training for a lot of women, and the fear around what I was talking about earlier, that we're going to burn ourselves out and we're actually going to do something worse to ourselves. And oftentimes women will come into our community, and specifically they'll come into something like Synced, which is my online fitness studio. And they will say, and most of our classes are 35 minutes, some are 45. And they will say, I am a beginner and I don't feel like I know where to start. Everything feels too hard. And so some of the first things that we will address or look at is it that the actual movement patterns feel too hard for our body, or is it the transition is too fast? Sometimes something can feel challenging because by the time you have figured out how to do the shoulder press, the instructor is already on to another exercise or two exercises later, and you're like, oh my God, I just got the flipping thing, and now you've already changed it to something else. So that can be one way we can feel like a beginner, is that when we're just getting into learning how to do something and it feels like, we've transitioned into the next, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a beginner. It just means that you are learning where you're at. And so you just got to be patient and give yourself that time. The other factor too is like your training volume. If your goal is to build muscle, we're not trying to strength train 5 and 6 days a week. If you are, just getting yourself into this, and if you're somebody who says, I've been feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, if you can start with 2 to 3 times a week, and you could do, your upper body on one day for a half an hour, and then you have a full rest day. So let's say Monday you did that upper body for a half an hour. Tuesday is a complete rest day. You're going to walk, you're going to do some mobility. You're just going to get in movement around the house. And then on Wednesday, you're going to train your lower body for a half an hour. Thursday, you're a complete rest. Maybe Friday, you're a rest, you get out for a walk. Saturday, you're going to train your upper body again. And then Sunday, you're going to choose what you want to do. So you've done that 3 times a week. What we're trying to do in the beginning is build you a habit. It's not about how much you can bang out. It's not about hitting, personal best. It's not about how much the scale is saying. It's not about closing your Apple circles on your watch. It's helping you to create a new behavior. And this is where so many women I see, they stop before they ever give themselves a chance to get started. In order to change your outcome in your health, so in order to shift from where you are right now listening to this, to move towards building muscle, having more energy, sleeping better, feeling better in your body, it's not about having discipline. It is about creating new behaviors. New behaviors are what birth new habits, and new habits are what create a new way of living. It's a new pattern for us. So all you're focusing on in the beginning is the behavior of showing up to move your body. And maybe it is 7 minutes that you do, and that's what you have got to start the new behavior. But you find a day goes by, you're craving going back to that 7 minutes, and you do it. A day goes by, you're craving it. So how you know you've actually started to create something that is now, like I always say, part of who you are and what you do, is the toothbrush effect. You couldn't imagine, not brushing your teeth every day. Well, you get to a point where you have such a solid behavior in your body of moving that the days you don't move, your body is like, ugh, like you just feel like you've got this fuzz on you. And you notice that, and you get yourself right back into that rhythm of moving. So I would say, if you're somebody that I just described who's feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, um, really just evaluate, where is that coming from? Is it that you feel like a beginner in the gym because you're just exhausted from life? And what if you could change your mindset, instead of thinking, I'm so tired and now I have to go work out, to being like, thank the frickin' heavens I get to go and lift some weights and work out, because this is my time. This is where I get to show up for me. This is where I actually get to say, oh, hey, body, how are you doing? I know we've taken care of everyone else today, but how are you doing? You don't have to go to a gym, right? Like, my whole studio is based out of my basement. My whole studio, I started teaching those classes in my living room, in my hallway, in my bedroom. because I've been in this industry teaching since I was 17 years old. And I know the amount of women who don't feel comfortable going into a gym. I know the amount of women who don't actually feel comfortable going into a group setting. So, how can we remove every barrier? Right? We have to be careful. Here's the thing I have learned in life, no matter what we're talking about, if it is our health, it is our business, it like whatever it is, if you keep fighting for your limitations and you keep coming up with reasons as to why something's not possible, that's what you get to keep. The reason it's not possible and your own limitation. And this is actually what I think is the hardest part for people. It's not about not knowing what the perfect formula is. It is being able to mentor and coach yourself when that's all that you've got. Like how can you show up for yourself? Every single class I teach, the very first thing that I do at the beginning of the class is I congratulate the ladies for showing up, because it is the hardest exercise you will ever do. It's showing up. It's showing up to yourself. Okay, so I just want to leave that one in there because I think it is so important. We're so hyper focused on what's the best split, what's the best training, what are the best exercises. The best thing is, can you start to move? And then let's have fun with it and work it from there and find something that you love. So if you're like, I don't like the weights right now. Okay, what do you like? Can we get you to start to do that? And then we can start to get more, finite and structured around what your goals are, right? If you're somebody that's been working out your whole life and you're like, I just need something fresh to wake up, that's a totally different conversation, right? I find for a lot of women, it's like, and I was one of those women, I was just doing way too much. If I go back and look at my body 7, 8 years ago, I was carrying extra weight and extra inflammation, not because I wasn't doing the right things. My volume was just too much. I was exercising too much and I wasn't eating in a way that supported my body. I train less now than I ever have, but when I do train, like I really show up and my body has never felt better. And so it took me years to unlearn that and to really, figure that one out. So we're not talking here about like, there's a big difference between building strength and burning calories. If you keep getting blocked by your devices, like I'm wearing an Aura ring, which I actually may ditch my Aura ring. I've been talking about this recently. So you might have an Aura ring, you may have a Whoop, you may have a Garmin, you may have an Apple Watch, and it'll tell you, right, as part of motivating you, how many steps you've done or how many calories you've burned. Burning calories is a bit futile when we're focused initially on building strength. And if we're just trying to burn calories, that's where we kind of get stuck in this realm of just going and doing more cardio. So we do like the cardio hit classes and the spin classes and running and, extra walking. Like we're just trying to do a lot of it. And I'm not saying don't do those things because of what happens with cortisol. We really need to stop demonizing cortisol. So many women are terrified of spiking their cortisol and that cortisol is their main issue. And I just want you to understand that your body should be able to spike cortisol. Cortisol being spiked is not an unhealthy sign from your body. What's unhealthy and is a warning sign is if your body does not have the ability to be able to produce cortisol and regulate that cortisol. Our bodies are meant to be able to provide cortisol, yes, during times of exercise, times of stress, times of illness, whatever it might be. The bigger thing is that we're not meant to live in a chronic state where we're just constantly like, I need more, I need more, I need more. Then we get into a depleted state. So, I'm not saying like go and choose to do HIIT all the time, but I also think a lot of women don't understand what HIIT actually means. So HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. And when a woman says to me, I do a 45 or a 60-minute HIIT class every week or multiple times a week, I'm like, then that's not HIIT. There's no way that you would be able to actually sustain true high intensity interval training for 45 to 60 minutes. What HIIT means is you go all out. So there's a few different ways you can do this. You could go like all out for 10 seconds, recover for 30. You could go all out for 30, recover for 45. You could go all out for a minute, but typically the max someone would go all out. And this is not often what you will see. This is oftentimes used of training for different athletes at different levels. Max efforts on like a Wingate or an air assault would be something like 4 minutes. That's insane. I mean, you are going to your max capacity. So when women are saying I do a 45 or a 60-minute HIIT class, I'm like, I feel like that's not what is actually being taught, or maybe it's not being taught optimally. True HIIT training you can do in about 10 to 12 minutes. 10 to 12 minutes. Like it doesn't have to be a lot. And so it's burst training, or it's like, just like these little exercise snacks that you're getting in. But when we're talking about how to be able to build muscle for fat loss, it's not about going and doing these long extended cardio sessions. So we build our muscle, we bring in the cardio, yes, for aerobic capacity, and to help the process a little bit, but we're not becoming cardio dependent. And how you know that you're overtraining is you're sore all the time, you're always exhausted, you need to have a nap, you hit a plateau. And this is the thing, is that if what you're using at home to measure your success is just a regular scale, you got to be careful with that, because a regular scale is not actually going to tell you what's happening to your body composition. And if what you're saying is you want to focus on building muscle, then the most inexpensive way to test this, ladies, is getting something done that's called an in-body scan. And you can, like, when I moved here to BC, I had somebody back home who did in-body scans. When I moved here, I literally just went online and I typed in-body scans in Kelowna, BC. And it spit out, an office here where they did it. It's $35 to go and get it done. And what it does is it breaks down and shows you your water mass, like your fat-free mass, your muscle, your skeletal muscle. It breaks it all down for you. So instead of being like, oh, I weigh 150 pounds, you weigh 150 pounds made up of this much bone, this much muscle, this much water. Or you could do something like a DEXA. Now, the InBody is just way more affordable for people to get. A DEXA is going to cost you a couple $100. And a DEXA, I think, is fantastic to have as a benchmark. But a DEXA, you'd maybe get done once every couple of years. I just finished interviewing Dr. Bill Campbell last week, who is a physique scientist. He is a PhD and he runs the entire division for the University of Southern Florida. And he has published more than 200 paper studies and abstracts specifically on fat loss and muscle building. And I said to him, how often should women that are in this age of life and trying to measure their bone density and their muscle mass and their fat be testing that? And he's like, if you're looking at something like a DEXA, which is going to give us your best gauge of your bone mass, outside of a bod pod, which most people won't have access to. If you get that done once every like 2 years, that's going to be fantastic. Something like an in-body scan for the woman who is like really trying to dial in and see her achievement beyond her scale, that you would go and get done probably 2 to 3 times a year, because it takes time to build muscle, right? Like for the average, if you're a newbie, oh my, I'm so jealous, because as a newbie, you get newbie gains, and it's going to be easier for you to put on 5 to 10 pounds of muscle in a year and a half than it would be for someone like me who's been lifting my whole life. It takes me an eternity. Like I committed 14 months last year to being able to build muscle, and I was able to put on a few pounds. I was like, oh my God. And I don't mean just a few pounds in general. The scale went up more than that, but of actual muscle. So in terms of how often I would suggest cardio, it really does depend on your goal. But I find, again, if we're talking about the woman we're talking about right now, is that I find if you can walk 4 or 5 days a week or even daily, and do like a 30-minute walk where you're having a conversation, you're not like power walking, you can have a conversation. That's fantastic for so many reasons. Your bone health, your mental health, and helping to get you to get more steps in. Remember, one of the ways that we are going to support being in a deficit to lose fat while also being able to preserve and build muscle, it's not about intensity, it's just about accumulating more steps, like what I'm doing with my hands, all the big talking, and moving your body more. So Josie, what I would say is for true cardio sessions, probably twice a week of cardio. So that could be like that HIIT that I described, or what would feel like a more intense cardio session. And then you're just walking on the other days. Now, again, I don't know every woman in the room. There's like, 800 of you who registered for this and over 100 that are on here live. I don't know everyone's goals, where you're at, what's going on. That's just kind of like a general rule of thumb. But if I have to choose day to day, I am picking the strength training and the resistance training over cardio. Walking is going to happen every day. We actually have an exciting partnership coming up with the walking pad company that we'll be sharing in a couple of weeks. But even having that under your desk, right, to be able, like, I can easily get in. Well, I'll show you. So I have my Oura ring here that tracks steps, but it will not track it if you are working at your standing desk and you have a walking pad, because this That's how it tracks it. You have to be in motion, okay? Like I'll finish teaching this class and my Aura Ring will ask me if I was playing tennis because I talk so much with my hands, and it's going to give me extra steps that I did not move. So I'm teaching you something about wearables here. So I started to do my own N of one experience. I started to create my own little lab on things, okay? And I went and bought myself a little pedometer. So I walked for an hour meeting today and I got in 5,143 steps on my walking pedometer that I just clipped onto my pants when I was on my walking treadmill. My ring said I did about 369 steps. So the reason I'm trying to help illuminate this with these wearable devices is oftentimes there can be discrepancies. So sometimes it can be telling you that you are doing more when you're doing less, and sometimes the vice versa. So pay attention to how your body's recovering. Could you just walk around your house? Yeah, if you can like make a point of, I work upstairs and I try to keep as few things as I need up here so I have more reasons to walk up and down the stairs. So in the beginning, that could be a great way to just get you in motion. And then it would be things like, can you go for a 5-minute walk away from the house and turn around and walk 5 minutes back? Can you squat? Can you do 25 standing squats every hour? There was an incredible study that showed if you did 25 squats every hour over X amount of hours, I think it was like over 4 or 5 hours, it was the equivalent to getting outside for a 30-minute walk in terms of the lactate threshold. And lactate, which we think of like when we go and do cardio and we're like, oh, you get a cramp, that is actually a metabolic byproduct that is helping to pull glucose into the cell. So it's helping with your insulin sensitivity. So if I had a pre-diabetic woman, if I had a woman who is like, my insulin levels keep going up, or my fasting glucose, my doctor keeps talking to me about this, my cholesterol is an issue, I need to get moving, but doing strength training just feels like a lot right now, I'd be like, okay, can we set a timer? And every hour, can you just stand and do 25 squats in front of a chair, tapping your bum back, and do that 4 more times? So you're getting in like 100 squats. Little things, like we think it's got to be super complicated. Um, Felt like the tracking wasn't helping you. And for some people, it doesn't, right? So again, there's never going to be one way and one system that is going to work for everyone. The faster we can just realize that and stop attaching ourselves to there being some type of system and way that one person in the world has figured out that works for every person in the world, you're going to start to have a lot more ease with this. Okay. All right, let's keep going on this. I want to dive into more about the nutrition formula for this. I want to talk about nutrition. I want to talk about supplementation because I want to get you being really efficient at this. And I don't want you wasting time, resources, or money on things that you do not need. So we're talking about the midlife shift in terms of nutrition. And remember, this is a nutrition formula that we're thinking about to keep you strong, ladies, to keep you energized, and to help build that muscle, and to help to have a body composition that feels comfortable. I'm not talking about us being able to wear the same pants we did when we were 30, right? Or weighing the same. I mean, like embracing the strong body that we are in right now. So the number one macronutrient that we need to be bringing in for muscle building and muscle retention is protein. And everyone asks, how much do you really need? So again, when I was interviewing Bill, and I interviewed JJ Virgin today and Dr. Eric Belkovich last week, and we have some really cool episodes coming up on the podcast, there's actually no data and study that shows the upper threshold of protein, okay? But there is definitely data and studies that show how much is too little, and specifically too little for women. The average North American woman is right now getting somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60, max 70 grams of protein a day when we have her track. So this is the important part, and this may not be for some people, and I totally get that. I'm not talking about measuring and tracking everything for the rest of your life, but here's what I'm saying. We are people of assumption. So we just assume that because we're having yogurt, that because we're having cheese, that because we're having some chicken and we're having some eggs, we're having some beans, that we're getting enough protein. That's what we do. We just assume it. We look at it and we go, yeah, check, that's protein. I'm getting enough protein. If we don't measure it, it's very hard to track it, and then very hard to be able to say whether or not we are truly doing everything, but nothing is changing. And this is the most common way that every woman feels right now. I feel like I'm doing everything and it's not working. And I always say, okay, let's break down what that means that you're doing everything. And when it comes to your nutrition and your macronutrients, which all macros means is your protein, carbs, and your fats. I also talk about fiber a lot in there. If we don't track what you are eating for about 2 weeks, I find in 2 weeks, most people a week actually, I can see the writing on the wall. I can identify and be like, okay, this is actually what we would need to shift. You will be able to see how many grams of carbohydrates you average a day and in each meal, how many grams of fat, and how many grams of protein. Protein is also a thermogenic macronutrient. So our body does a much better, easier job at utilizing carbohydrate, sugars, and excess fat to store fat than it does protein. So for most women, we are trying to move the target towards aiming to get a bare minimum starting point of 100 grams of protein a day. What would that look like over the course of a day? Okay, so you'd have your breakfast, your lunch, probably a little snack. I find most women need between 3 and 4 o'clock, and then a dinner. And if we're talking 100 grams, if you were to be able to get in 25 grams of protein at your breakfast, at your lunch, that little afternoon snack and dinner time, there's your 100 grams, okay? We also live in a time now where you can go on Pinterest for tons of ideas. You could go on to Chat GPT. You could literally say, help me understand how I can get in 100 grams of protein a day. These are my favorite protein types of foods. Can you give me some ideas? And it'll go and like spit it all out. If you are not getting in enough protein, okay, and this is like, I'll just share like real life. So my husband right now, he wants to lose a little bit of weight. My husband used to have a very physical job and did CrossFit all the time. He has changed his career. He's not physical on his feet anymore. He moves about half the amount he used to, and he stopped doing CrossFit because he was repeatedly getting injured. And now we have a full gym in the basement and he strength trains down there. So a few factors of intensity has changed. So he started to notice some weight coming around his waist. He's 48. And he was like, I'm like, okay, start to track. In his mind, he's like, I live with you. How could I not be eating everything I'm supposed to eat? I live with you, Jen. And I'm like, Chris, just please track. Sure enough, not even close to hitting his targets. Actually wasn't eating enough. And what he was getting in was more carbohydrates, not actually hitting his fat, and definitely not enough protein. So it was a carb forward approach. And he lives in the house with me. And so I just illuminate that to be like, we think we're doing it until we track it. So tracking, it's free. You can download My Fitness Pal. Here's what I will tell you about tracking is weigh your food. Don't just use a tablespoon or a measuring cup, weigh it. So a food scale, very inexpensive. You can get them at like Walmart, Canadian Tire, Target, Amazon, very inexpensive. Um, and so I would actually weigh to understand this because ladies, it'll change your life and it will create a ton of food freedom for you. Because now what you'll do is when you measure out and see, oh my gosh, that is actually what 30 grams of protein from chicken looks like, or beef or fish. Now, when you go to a restaurant, you go to someone's home, you go out on a holiday, you now have built the skill set of being able to visually see this looks like the 30 grams that I would have that I would weigh out. You also start to understand where your sources of protein, of carbohydrates are coming from. And so many women fear carbohydrates. I am never going to tell you to cut out your carbohydrates. I do not believe that sustainable success can be found in taking out an entire food group and an entire macronutrient. But what I can tell you is that sometimes in the beginning, if you've had a very carbohydrate rich forward diet, we may need to go moderate or lower carbohydrate as we're titrating, as we're bringing the protein up, keep the healthy fat and fiber in there, and then we can start to find this equilibrium. So for a lot of women, oftentimes it's bringing in the lower glycemic index carbohydrates, right? So like apples and organic berries, those are beautiful. Bringing in non-starchy vegetables. So yes, like all your dark leafy greens and your peppers and cucumbers and snap peas and bok choy and cabbage and, cauliflower and all of those. And then being able to get the body into a little bit of an insulin reset. And then we start to bring in some of the starchier. We start to bring in things like the potatoes and the rice and even pasta if you want to have that. But your body now has become more adept at being able to manage those carbohydrates coming in that starchier form. Okay. And again, for everyone, it's different. I'm at a point in my body in my life and because of my training where I do not do well not having starchy carbohydrates. I need those starchy carbohydrates to have the power in my lifts to recover, to not be sore all the time, and for this brain, which this is a big head with a big brain inside of here, for me to feel cognitively energized and sound, it does not work for me to be stripping my carbohydrates. I feel like junk. And so I see this for so many women. Their thyroid's in the crapper, their adrenals and nervous system aren't doing well. There's a lot of hormone fluctuations going on. Sleep is not great, and they are living off salad and protein and, eggs and sliced tomato. And I'm like, this is going to feel scary when I say this to you, but can we please start to bring in some carbohydrates? Okay, some carbohydrates. Really important. Um, Following a macro plan has been quite successful for you. Is it okay to use a palm size or half a cup for beans? I would still say to measure. In the beginning, like, yes, but I mean, my palm is different than your palm is different than someone else's. And so if you go and try to like put that into something like my fitness pal, it's not a true measurement. So trying to use the scale is always going to be a better way. It doesn't matter when you are adding in something into like a tracking system, you can choose. So if you want to put in cooked or you want to put in raw, you just tell it that's what it is that you're weighing. And how I have found the best success for people in doing this is reverse engineer it. So for instance, like with my husband, I was talking about, he puts his dinner in first. So we know what we're going to have in the house most nights of the week. We don't do meal prep, we do food prep. Here's the difference. We're not big recipe people. I don't really have time to be in the kitchen whipping out a whole bunch of cookbooks and going on a recipe. We're chuck it in people. And so we cook up a bunch of protein sources, veggie sources, and then we just build meals out of that. So he'll go put his dinner in first and reverse engineer his day. And the reason why this can make you more successful is if you start just tracking as your day goes on, okay? You put your breakfast in, you're like, oh, I have tons left. And you have your lunch and I have tons left. Then you have your snack and then you get to dinner and you're like, oh my God, I need to get in 80 more grams of protein. I have no carbohydrates left and I have 6 grams of fat. What the heck am I going to eat? And so in the beginning, when you first start to track, this is probably what will happen because you're just measuring your habits. We're not doing this to be perfect. You're not changing anything in the first week or so. You're just going to track your habits. So now you have data. This is how you get your data, not the internet's data. This is how you get your data. And now you have your data, and now you can start to build out a plan that's based on that. How about treats? Well, it's your definition of treats, right? Like there's no reason that you cannot have good quality chocolate every day if you love that. There's no reason that, like I am making us for dessert tonight, chocolate avocado pudding. I have a bunch of avocados that are ready to have their last day. And I'm going to throw the avocados into a food processor with some cocoa powder and a little bit of maple syrup and whiz it all up and make a pudding. So again, you just have to plan for it. So if you really love to have a treat, put the treat in first. So now you've already accounted for it, and then you just reverse engineer it from there. I'm going to talk about supplements in a little bit, Gina, and creatine is one of those. So again, ladies, what we want to be focusing on for nutrition is if you can start to make protein the star of the show, I promise you, your cravings are going to change. Your satiation, you're going to feel more satiated when you are getting enough of that in, and then you fill your plate, the rest of it with your good quality, beautiful colored carbohydrates. You get your healthy fats in, like good quality oils, avocado and olive oil, tallow, grass-fed butter, ghee, the meat of avocados, coconut, olives, like those kind of things. And oftentimes you'll find that when you're choosing really good sources of protein, a lot of your healthy fats are just going to be in that protein. And then fiber. Fiber is massive for your gut health. When we age as women, our gut microbiome goes through a huge change. And so bringing enough fiber in is important. Fiber helps to support blood sugar management, estrogen detoxification, and it'll actually help to optimize your metabolic function overall. And then, yeah, one of you were asking about that. I'm not a fan of alcohol for a lot of different reasons, but especially for women who the weight won't budge. They're having really poor sleep. They're getting hot flashes. They're feeling a lot of brain fog. Cognitive function is not where it used to be. We want to look at things that are highly inflammatory. Alcohol is definitely one of those. Also at a time where everyone is talking about things that are, supporting breast health and against breast health. alcohol is definitely not supporting our breast health. So reducing that or eliminating it and changing up to mocktails. I actually, within us, who is in collaboration with us tonight, they have this incredible vitamin C powder that I use, and I make my mocktails with that. So I do a little bit of sparkling water like San Pellegrino, and I still put it in a wine glass. I do ice, the San Pellegrino. I do a scoop of my vitamin C powder, and sometimes I'll put in like a half a scoop of my Rehydrate. And one of the flavors, I love the lemon and the vitamin C ones together. And that's beautiful, right? Your adrenals love that because you're getting all of the minerals, but your taste buds, because there's also beautiful flavor to it as well. Okay. Meal timing. This is a great question. So I really am a big believer in waking in the morning, having our natural light exposure, and eating within the first 1 to 2 hours of waking. I'm a huge fan and always have been of balancing our systems with a circadian rhythm. So eating and doing the majority of our work in life when the sun is up and when light is out. And I understand we're at a time of year where you might be like, there's no sun where I live right now, Jen. I live in gray. Well, gray is not black, and that's what I mean, is when we're in the daytime. And so having a good quality breakfast in the first 1 to 2 hours of waking, I'm a big fan of like nutrient timing. So I do most of my weightlifting sessions in the morning. And so sometimes they are fasted when I'm teaching in synced because I teach so early, but I'm always drinking something. Like I always have my Rehydrate, which I'll talk about in a bit, in my water, and I've got essential amino acids I add in there. So I'm not getting nothing. But then when I am done training, I am having a supportive meal. I'm getting in a good quality amount of those starchy carbs post strength training because that's the best time for me to get it in. When I have women who are having poor sleep at night, I find what doesn't work for women if they don't sleep well is doing something like just protein and veggies in the evening. I give them protein and veggies, but I also add in some carbohydrate at night to help support serotonin and melatonin production and conversion, as well as tryptophan to help them have a better night's sleep for that. What are my thoughts on fasting? It depends. It there's a time and a place for everything, but I think the languaging matters. So I am much more preferential to time restricted eating, meaning, I find most women's bodies do really well with like a 12-hour digestive rest. Meaning if you eat dinner at 7 at night and then you don't eat again and you don't eat again till 7 the next morning, that's 12 hours. And that's a beautiful period of time to buffer enough time for digestion between when you've eaten and when you go to bed. We want to try to get in a few hours to be able to sleep better overnight, to not have blood sugar spikes or lows when we're sleeping and waking us between 1 and 4 in the morning. And also, when we do get up in the morning, to get that metabolic fire going. So I say for most women, in my experience, 12 to a max of 14 hours works best. When we talk about utilizing it for something like autophagy, there are other things that support autophagy. Exercise. So if women are trying to utilize this time restricted eating window and doing, fasting, exercise is also supporting and producing autophagy in our body. And so I think about, again, if we're trying to build these strong, vital bodies moving forward, it means we have to nourish enough, move enough, and recover enough that we bring the whole system together. So let's dive into supplements, because this is really important. And to me, this is part of our performance and our recovery system. Now, again, tonight, I'm going to focus in on the supplements that I think are most important based on what it is that we're talking about. Obviously, if you were to have a very dialed in protocol based on, an autoimmune condition that you have, very specific gut issues that are going on, that's a different story than what it is that I am going to be talking about and teaching about for the next couple of minutes. So I do just want you to keep that in mind. And then I'm going to open up the floor for some Q&A. So when we look at supplements that are really important in regards to exercise, hands down, electrolytes are so important. And I use electrolytes when I'm training. Every single class I'm teaching, either in my Synced Community Live or here in town where I teach live, I always say to my students, like, make sure you've got your electrolytes. Do you have something in your water? If you're going out for a walk or you're doing, a gentle yoga flow in class, not necessary. But if you're doing strength training, you're doing a more challenging Pilates or bar class, you're the kind of woman that says, I get dizzy often. When I go to the ground and I stand back up, I feel lightheaded and I feel dizzy. 100% I want using electrolytes. So I know everyone loves a good show and tell. This company here within us who is sponsoring tonight, this is their Rehydrate. This is the lemon flavor. It comes in multiple flavors. And what I love about this is that there is a beautiful balance in here of core minerals. So we've got in our magnesium, our potassium, there's calcium, we've got sodium, but we also have collagen. And it is one of the few electrolytes on the market that has collagen and a really bioavailable, meaning easy to digest, absorb, and uptake. So when I add a scoop of my Rehydrate into my water, which I actually have in here right now, I am getting 2.5 grams of collagen, which is also supporting my gut. And why does this matter to me when I'm working out or when I'm doing this? Right now, as I am teaching, my body literally thinks I am working out. My internal stress meter is higher because I am very invested in what I am doing with you all right now. That means I am producing a level of oxidative stress. I am actually increasing free radicals sitting here communicating with this much passion. When I am lifting weights, when I am exercising, when all of you are doing this, this is a natural byproduct of tearing down muscle tissue, of creating a form of eustress, positive stress on the body is oxidative stress. Bringing in this collagen is helping me to actually get in front of that becoming something detrimental. Bringing in the electrolytes in here is supporting my adrenals and my nervous system so my recovery is on point and I am able to perform better. Now, I'm oftentimes asked by people, and I just explained to you what I notice when I use it. I'm going to tell you the biggest difference for me is when I don't, when I forget. Sometimes I travel and I don't bring my travel sticks, which are like, it frustrates me beyond belief when I don't bring it when I travel because I don't have the same energy. I feel it. So I use it for women in all of our programs and recommend it if you are working out, but also if you are just at a point where you describe yourself feeling overwhelmed and burned out. You have a job that is maybe super draining. You have humans in your life that are super draining. You find you drink a lot of water, but you're dry, you're dehydrated, you don't feel like you're retaining that water. Start to add something like Rehydrate in. Any of your Within Us products, you can use the code JennPike20 and you can bundle everything up and save 20% on everything that it is that you order. Now, the other thing I'm going to talk about is that when we think about something like collagen, okay? If you follow me on Instagram, I always share how I have a matcha in the morning. I drink a matcha, my husband has coffee, but we always upgrade it. So we add in functional mushrooms into our products, but we also add in collagen. And for years, like I want to say, even before collagen was cool, I was using collagen and I was always using bovine, which I don't have anything against bovine at all. But I was using bovine, which was beef based, and I was using companies where it had a huge scooper. And then I was introduced to Within Us, which was marine based. And when I had tried marine previously, the other companies, like it smelt fishy. And I was just like, I am not here for this. Even though I'm a pike, my last name is after a fish. I was like, I cannot do this. And I was introduced to this company, and there were three things that stood out to me. Number one, I opened the bag and I was like, I smell nothing. Number two, the scoop was a fraction of the size of what I was used to. And in my brain in the beginning, I was like, but wait a second, that means I'm getting less. Actually, not true. So I started to dive deeper into the research. I looked at how they source, I looked where they get it from, the fact that they're only using the scales, which is actually how we should be deriving collagen, and the fact that every single grain that is in that collagen is bioavailable, which means your body has an easier time to uptake and absorb it. So for me, I was struggling with a lot of hair loss after the stress of COVID. And I am telling you the difference. Like I did a lot of things. I did scalp regeneration, like massage. I changed my collagen that I was using. There were a few things I did, but I swear to you that was one of the reasons that my hair got better. My elasticity of my skin felt better. My nails, I have to freaking cut them all the time. And I keep pointing over here because I have like, it comes in a bag. And then we actually have it we transitioned it into a glass mason jar just because we have a little lazy Susie on the counter with all of our stuff and it's just smaller than the bag. So I put it there. So their collagen I love and I added into the matcha. Now, here's the thing with matcha. So the Rehydrate, I think, is an important supplement for your training right now and just life. I think collagen is an incredible way to upgrade a morning beverage like coffee or a matcha. You could add it to a smoothie. You also can literally just put it into your water. Here's the other thing. I get asked all the time, do I have to cut my coffee? The answer is no. I would just say choose a really good quality coffee. And then I get asked why I choose matcha. So I don't deal well with coffee. I never have. It'll immediately give me heart palpitations and it just feels very acidic to me and my body doesn't like it. Matcha is one of the highest ORAC value nutrients that we can access. It is there. This is an organic, fair trade, shadow grow or shade grown, first harvest, beautiful ceremonial grade form of matcha. And matcha powder is in the family of green tea. And it has not only a high ORAC value, it is anti-carcinogenic, it is loaded with antioxidants, and it does contain caffeine, but not in a jittery way. So for someone like me where I can't handle caffeine, matcha has been this beautiful addition for me where it actually does help me feel a little bit more alert. I love it. It's incredible for your liver. So I am always looking at ways to support my liver. I mean, I have always, but especially now as I'm now into my mid 40s, because the liver plays such a huge role in our hormonal health. And there's just so much goodness from it. So and you need a very little amount. I use like a half a teaspoon of it with my collagen and a little bit of milk that I just hand froth up and then I add in hot water and it's wonderful. And yeah, some of you are asking, you see they have a misto product. They do. And what's great with the misto, and I have that one here, is this one has the collagen built right into it. And it's got coconut milk that's in it as well too. So I'll take that when I travel. Because when I travel, and let's just say, like, and is this the best quality that I'm going to tell you? Not necessarily. Okay, so just hold tight for this. Is that, let's say I travel and I go to a Starbucks. I can just go to Starbucks and say, can I get a steamed almond milk or a steamed coconut milk? And I can go put my scoop of my matcha misto that's in there, right? So different things like that. The name of the collagen, it's called Within Us. Okay, so Within Us, and I can link it up for you. When we send out the recording as well, I'll link up all these products for you and I'll link it up on their site so you can go read about it. But you can use the code JennPike20 on all of it. I do, Julia, right now, I am preferring the marine based over the grass fed beef. Now, that may not be for everybody, right? Again, I was using grass fed beef, which is bovine, for years. And it's that thing where when you're using something for a period of time and you're like, my body's doing well with it, and then you start something out and you're like, oh, that was kind of it for me. Can I show the matcha again? Yeah, it's just called True Organic Matcha. Again, I'll link everything up for you on there. What's the latest time of the day to drink a matcha? Ooh, I would say for me, anything before 4 o'clock, I'm good. If I were to have it at night, maybe thinking of a lot of thoughts. I'd probably be messaging my team being like, I had this idea. So for me, I wouldn't. You are so welcome. What is the caffeine content in matcha? Typically somewhere around 70 milligrams. And Leanne, I am like also super sensitive and knock on everything. I have been wonderful with it. And listen, if matcha didn't work for you and you were trying to move away from coffee, dandelion is beautiful to be able to use, things like that, like Dandy Blend or even like dandelion or milk thistle tea is wonderful for the liver and very supportive as well. And then yes, sleep. And so I want to talk to you about sleep because there are different products, and then I'm going to talk to you about creatine, and I'm going to talk to you about essential amino acids. So oftentimes people will reach out to me and ask, what is the best magnesium for sleep? And here's the thing with magnesium I want you to understand. First of all, majority of us are quite deficient in the mineral magnesium. And so it is important to be supplementing. Now, the type of supplement that you use, there's a few different options that you could be considering. The first thing to understand, though, is that magnesium is not a sedative. You're not going to take magnesium and be like, boom, go to sleep. Magnesium is a relaxing, restorative mineral. And there are different forms of types. Probably the most common form that you're going to hear about is a bisglycinate or a citrate. So citrates are typically given to people in a powder form, and especially if you're constipated, usually a citrate is what you'd be recommended, okay? Bisglycinate, very easy to absorb and break down, very gentle on the stomach, and beautiful for the woman who is just like, I'm tired of waking up with restless leg syndrome, cramps in my calves, my feet cramping out. I just need to get a good night's sleep and my mind to relax. So there is a powdered form of magnesium that's really nice to have in the evening with warm water and turmeric, collagen plus magnesium within us. This light out of the way. What is this? So you can see it. Again, I'll link it up. There we go. Here's the thing I like about this. It has citrate and bisglycinate. So you get about 250 milligrams of magnesium in one scoop. But get this, the collagen peptides I find help women who are telling me that they have some of those blood sugar swings, just creates a little bit of enough of a buffer with the collagen in there to help them to not just fall asleep, but stay asleep. And there's L-theanine. L-theanine, if you've looked at any sleep product, whether it's had melatonin in it or 5-HTP or GABA, L-theanine within you is known as like the champion of being able to work synergistically with other nutrients, specifically minerals like magnesium. So this one, my husband and I both use at night. So we have our mugs that are out by the kettle. And I don't like boil the water. We have a kettle that you can choose the temperature, and I take it up to about 70 degrees, and then we just have that. Here's the other thing, it tastes delicious. So for those of you ladies who are asking, what do you do when you have cravings? What if you do if you want to have a treat at night? I'm not even lying to you. The flavor, okay, of adding this in, and you could do like a little pinch of sea salt if you wanted. You could add a little squeeze of fresh lemon juice if you wanted. It'll change your palate enough where you're not going to be having, that hankering craving. So it's a really beautiful one. And I would say, like, I can't drink this right before bed because then I'd wake up to pee. So we usually go to bed around 9:30 here. Senior. So dreamy. I love it. It's like my bedtime in 4 hours. I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. If my 25-year-old Jen could listen to my 45-year-old self right now, she would be like, you are a loser with a capital L. And I would be like, just you wait, girl. So it's my bedtime in 4 hours. I typically will drink this around like 8 o'clock. So about an hour and a half before I'm going to bed. And here's the reason I have found for me is that it cues my body up. So just like with babies and with our children, we will like give them a bath and like quiet down the house and put their jammies on and pull out the story. We're giving them all the cues, like bedtime is coming. Y'all better get ready to sleep. Same thing in our adult body. We need cues. And this is where we can go backwards as we get older, is the number one thing our body needs outside of muscle is proper sleep. And it's the number one thing that women struggle with. Can't get sleep, then we can't build the muscle. And it's like, okay, so if we could start to get the better quality sleep, we have to get to bed earlier and we have to start to give our adult body cues. A cue for sleep is not scrolling Instagram in bed at night. A cue for sleep is not being on Netflix right before bed. It's not eating right before bed. All those things do is jack up your stress response because you're getting blue light exposure. You are probably, when you're on something like Instagram and maybe Netflix or whatever it is, being exposed to perhaps some negative energy and things happening in the world. And it is giving your body the signal for cortisol to stay elevated in the evening, when as soon as the sun goes down and darkness comes up, that is the internal signal to our body to start to wind things down. And when cortisol starts to drop, that's melatonin's cue to come up. You have two light switches in your body. And when the sun comes up in the morning, that is the sign. This is why everyone is trying to get you to understand the importance of natural light in your eyes in the morning. Ladies, this is the number one free way you wake up your cortisol awakening response. This is how we start to restore energy. It doesn't have to be sunlight, it's just light, okay? That tells cortisol to start to be produced. You peak the most cortisol that you should produce in your day within the first few hours of waking. And then your body has this incredible, like, banking management system happening behind the scenes to kind of just like titrate it down slowly. If it's not happening slowly and you feel like you fall off the cliff, what happens is between 1 and 3 o'clock, you're like, I need a nap. I need a coffee. I need sugar. Like, I ain't going to make it. When you start to feel that, hydrate, get your electrolytes in, pick yourself back up. Maybe that's when you have a matcha, okay? But more importantly, it's recognizing that now as you come into the evening, it took me so long to break this habit because I was a woman who got her second wind when my children went to bed. And so when my second wind would hit, I was on my computer. I was doing everything late into the night. And then I couldn't figure out why I couldn't sleep because I work in the industry and I had all the tools. I was like, why can't I sleep? And as soon as I started to give myself the toddler cues of going to bed, and I got to bed earlier, Like literally the fact that I go to bed at 9:30. I know it's crazy. I went from a time in my life where I was sometimes going to bed the next day after midnight when I was like really building my company and my children were little. And then it was like, okay, 11 is my goal. 10:45, 10:30, 10 o'clock. Now if I see 10 o'clock, like my son has a hockey game that starts at 7:30 on Friday night. I'm already becoming unhinged at how I'm going to stay awake to watch my kid's game and get back home close to midnight. So it's like you start to train your body and your system. And it's just like your children. The earlier you get them to bed, the better they sleep. The longer you keep them up, the crappier the sleep. You are the same. You are the same. So go to bed. Okay. Okay, let me come in here for some of these. What is the code again? It is Jenn Pike 20 within us. Okay, let me, I'm just going to go in here. I'll hyperlink the website for you so you can go and you can check out all of their products. I also did an incredible podcast with the founder, Tammy. And here is the other thing I love about the company is they are Canadian based. They are BC based. And when you listen to her story and why she created this product, her mother was the main reason. And it's just such a beautiful story. And it's a Canadian-based company and it's wonderful. And so you can go there and you can use the code GenPike20. Magnesium is also recommended by my neurologist to prevent migraines. Great neurologist, because magnesium is needed for so many things. Now, this is where I also want to say that creatine comes in. Creatine is so interesting. Like I've been in the fitness industry forever. And so I've been using creatine since I was like in my late teens, when back then everybody thought that creatine and steroids went hand in hand. Like I remember my dad saying to me, like, that's really dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that, Jennifer. Like you're going to bulk up. And I was like, Dad, have you seen my frame? I hope I'm going to bulk up. That did not happen. But nowadays, we know the cognitive benefits of bringing in creatine. Our body's naturally producing this, but our body needs assistance over time, right? Just like anything else that, we once did a really beautiful job at producing, like collagen. And around the age of 30 and definitely by 40, our body's ability to be able to produce this is not as good. So getting in about 5 to 10 grams of collagen a day, wonderful. Getting in, 3 to 5 grams of creatine a day, wonderful. Here's the good news. You can just put all of your things into the same water and get that in there. Sip on it while you're working out. You can add certain things like this into your smoothie. So there's a very low barrier to being able to get the nutrients that we're talking about into your body. It's like for me, the collagen and the matcha, they go together. When I'm having the like in the water and I can add in my essential amino acids and my creatine with this all together and I get it in one shot. I always drink out of liter mason jars because it's easy for me to know. My goal for me is 3 of these a day, 3 liters of good quality filtered water with all those nutrients. Water is your easiest vehicle to get good nutrients in. There are certain products and companies I use that are capsule based, but I try to do as few capsules as possible. I am looking for powders, liquids, emulsions, and tinctures and those types of things because it bypasses the gut. Like it's going to get right into my bloodstream, right into my cells, right into my tissue and support my mitochondrial function. That's the way you have to look at these products that we're talking about. Ceremonial cacao, love it. Beautiful. I use that. It's very decadent and rich. So for me, I typically will have that on the weekend, a little bit earlier in the day, and you can add in collagen. I can't say that I can tell you that there is actually an upper limit to collagen, but I can tell you, you don't need to be adding in 4 scoops a day. You're just going to go through it faster and spend more money. I would say 5 to 10 grams. So like, adding in 1 to 2 scoops of the marine-based collagen from within us would be perfect. I add a scoop into my matcha. I add a scoop into, typically something else I have in the day. How many carbs would be helpful to eat at your last meal to support sleep? Generally, I find somewhere around 30 grams of a starchy carbohydrate. So that could be something like 30 grams is like 8 baby potatoes, right? Like, the baby potatoes. It could be like a half to 3/4 of a sweet potato, depending on the size of it. So probably like 150 grams of sweet potato. Could be a half a cup of rice. Things like that I find can be really good. We don't need to have a ton of it. It could be half a cup of beans, half a cup of lentils. A little goes a long way. It's also just knowing and understanding that digestively, if you're the woman I was talking about who's getting in 60 grams of protein and all of a sudden you're trying to go and increase it, like I'll just tell you transparently, I average about 150 grams of protein a day. Now, I'm not new to this. I do, work out and strength train to a fairly strong intensity, and I know my body. And so for me, I don't have any digestive issues bringing that in, but I do see it where women, all of a sudden they increase their protein and now they're constipated or they have new gas and bloating. So if that happens, first thing is maybe you need a digestive enzyme. Maybe you need some digestive bitters. You could bring that in and just see how that feels for your body, or maybe you just have to titrate back a little bit. Get to a point where you feel like you can manage maybe 20 or 25 grams a meal instead of 30 or more a meal. Body feels good. Make sure you're hydrated enough. That's going to support your poop. Make sure with the increase in protein, you have enough fiber, right? If you're not getting enough fiber, we need to be able to give bulk with soluble and insoluble fiber to the stool to be able to move through the body as well too. Any advice for an IBS supplement? Food as it may. Okay, so I can't say one in general, but I will tell you that I've had very good success with people with IBS. The first thing I would actually say is to run a stool test, because IBS is in the functional space referred to as like interesting kind of BS, because it's a catch-all term. And if you've been told that you have IBS, but no one's dug any deeper functionally, there are things that are impacting that. So you could have H. pylori, candida yeast parasites. You could have very low healthy good gut bacteria like Akkermansia, Roseburia. And so to just isolate to one supplement, it wouldn't be responsible for me to say to you, just go take this and you'll be fine. So working with a practitioner to run a stool test, I think is very important. Secondary to that, adding in berberine and quercetin can be very, very helpful. So digestive enzymes, berberine can be beautiful for helping to reduce inflammation and also manage your insulin and glucose, and then adding in quercetin. Quercetin is very good, especially if you're somebody who has a lot of increasing food sensitivities and a histamine response. So typically I say in the beginning, start with about 500 milligrams of berberine and 500 milligrams of quercetin with your meals, typically lunch and dinner, and see over the course of 3 to 4 weeks, do you notice any kind of shift? And then bringing in digestive enzymes would be important. The other factor here, ladies, is like if you have any gut issues or you have something like IBS, it matters if you have a gallbladder. If you don't have a gallbladder, you need an enzyme that has some bile and pancreatin. Okay, we do a whole nother class just on your poop and on your gut. How much fiber a day is needed? In general, anywhere from 25 to 35 grams. But again, the average Canadian woman is getting somewhere between 8 to 12 grams of fiber a day. So if all of a sudden you were to wake up tomorrow and take in double the amount of fiber, and you're not getting hydrated and you don't move your body, right? So the other thing with constipation is if you have slow motility, are you actually moving your body around to help to support that? I know we would love just this super quick answer and like go to a supplement store and go buy this product and it's going to fix it. It doesn't work like that. So maybe one of our next master classes we do will be around like IBS and gut health. If you're a practitioner, I teach about this stuff all the time in my mentorship so that more practitioners understand how to support people moving forward. I have not found there to be any side effects of collagen or any of the products as a whole. Now, that being said, everyone's body responds differently to everything. What's my opinion about dehydroberberine? I don't know if that's a brand that you're asking about or a form of it. Berberine in itself, I love. If there's gas, you're looking at digestive enzymes, you're looking at bitters, those kind of things, right? When there's gas, that means there's fermentation and putrefaction happening on a gut level. Means the body is having a difficult time breaking down what it is that you have consumed. Sometimes it's also the way you're cooking it. So if you're doing a lot of raw, that can be a big indicator. So try roasting, steaming, sauteing, and see how your body responds to that. Brands of creatine. I use a brand called PVL. I have no association. Here's what you want to look for with creatine. Creatine. Now, there's creatine monohydrate and there's creatine HCl. Creatine HCl tends to be a little bit more bioavailable. And for people who are prone to any bloating or water retention, the creatine HCl works really well. Creatine monohydrate, which is like kind of the more classic form of creatine, if you don't have any issues with bloating or water retention, then you'd be fine in using that. But all you're looking for from a company is that the ingredient should be creatine. There are new companies on the market now where they're targeting it towards women, and this isn't a bad thing, but it will have the inclusion of things like taurine and magnesium with the creatine. I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that creatine is the supplement right now that we're going to be seeing have its shiny moment. So just try to make sure you're looking for something that's just like straight up what it is that you need. Protein powders that I love, all different. I like plant-based and I like beef-based. My body does not do well with whey, but there's a lot of really good companies that are on the market now. So, in Canada, Genuine Health is a good company. I think the company is called like Hella Good, which is a Canadian female-based one. You've got Equip that is in from the States. Designs for Health has very good ones as well too. So I would say those tend to be my top three that I oscillate between. But there's a lot of new products that are coming on the market, and sometimes it is kind of hard to stay on top of the latest and greatest. Probiotics can be a great idea, but the more I have learned about gut health and as I've been, studying and doing so many tests on stool over the last 7 years, um, I really like to give specific probiotics, meaning I've done a stool test and I know what the body needs. I would say a very benign probiotic is something that has Saccharomyces boulardii. That's a strain, and we'll include that in the notes because that's a mouthful. Saccharomyces boulardii, and that can be a very good one. Bifidobacterium is another one as well too. Um, Dun, 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 dun. Is rehydrate replacing your other electrolyte powders? For me, it is. But I will tell you, sometimes if so, we hike a lot here in BC, and if it's hot in the summer and we're doing a longer hike, I will add a scoop of my rehydrate and I will add like a quarter or half a pack of LMNT simply because it just has more sodium. Or I add in like a quarter of a teaspoon of like a Redmond's real salt. But I always use the rehydrate as my base because I don't have another electrolyte that's going to give me the collagen and going to give me some of these ratios. And then I'll just like jack it up a little bit if I'm going to go and do something that's more intense. Um, what to do is my body makes too much histamine. That's such a big question, Heather, and I so sorry, but we've already gone 90 minutes. I don't have the time to open that one up, but I will tell you that we will offer another masterclass that's going to be coming up about the gut in the next couple of months. In the meantime, start to follow Dr. Becky Campbell. For any of you who have any histamine issue, she is a friend and colleague of mine, and she specializes in MCAS, which is mast cell activation syndrome. Dr. Becky Campbell. She's based out of Florida. She's fantastic. El Rudery yogurt, when you make it on your own, fantastic. Okay, ladies. Are there brands of berberine and quercetin? I like AOR. I like Designs for Health. Those would probably be my top ones in Canada. If you're in the US, Pure Encapsulation, Thorne, Biotics, they're good ones as well too. Okay, I have time for one more question that is in there. What type of exercise should you do when you're on your period? I mean, my first response in that would be, how do you feel on your period? Some women need to like literally just really, for me, okay, I'll give you an example. My first 2 days, I'm walking, I'm doing gentle movement, maybe some yoga. I'm not doing heavy lifts. Other women will say as soon as their period starts, they feel a huge relief because the days leading into their period when they don't have energy. From a hormone perspective, your hormones are at their lowest in your first 48 to 72 hours of your bleed. It's not necessarily the best time to go and do your biggest lifts and compound multi-joint movements where you also have a higher injury risk. And so it's not that you can't exercise. It's not like, oh, you have your period, you're broken, you have to just lie down. That's not what that means. Listen to your body, but I wouldn't be pushing it, to the highest intensity. All right, ladies, I know we could stay on here forever. I always say like you could pack your toothbrush and we could hang out until tomorrow. I'm sorry I couldn't get together or necessarily answer every single question. But like I said, we will include some notes for you and key takeaways and all of that. I hope that this was really impactful for you. And again, if you're looking for any codes for anything I talked about, two ways to do that. head over to Within Us. I hyperlinked it up in here. We'll send in the notes. The code is Jenn Pike 20. And you can always find the discount codes on my Instagram highlight reel right at the top. It says discounts and codes there. And oh, you're so welcome. You are so, so welcome. And thank you all so much for spending the time and hanging out. And we will see you all back here next time. Thank you again to Within Us, I was going to say our show sponsor, but our Masterclass sponsor. And it has been so incredible spending all this time with you all. Have a beautiful rest of your night. Go to bed. Take care.